My wound became infected. The doctor needed to operate on me a second time. This made it very difficult for me to breathe. They tested the fluid in the infected area and found staph bacteria in it. My second surgery began. The doctors gave me an anesthetic, but after a long time, I could still hear sounds around me. I heard the doctors lamenting and talking about my little 1-year-old daughter and how maybe I would never see her again. They talked about my family, my father and my husband. Why do they talk about me and my family like that? I'm still alive. They shouldn't talk like that. Don't they know that I can still hear? I felt very confused and angry. At that time, my situation was not good. My whole body was invaded by staph bacteria. It was very complicated to completely eliminate this bacteria. During the first surgery, my wound became infected, but no one knew why. The tools used by the doctors were sterilized. I woke up in the ICU and I opened my eyes to find my family gathered around me, their faces full of sadness. There was no way to communicate with them because I had an oxygen tube inserted in my throat. I wanted to tell them, "It's not that bad, I feel fine." The doctor asked me how I was feeling and I made a victory sign. The doctor walked out of the room to talk to my parents. I heard their conversation. The doctor said I was confused and most likely had a brain injury. We are considering which antibiotics to use to treat the bacteria in her body. What kind of disease does she have, doctor? What should we do now? My mother asked anxiously. The staph had just begun to spread, but it was very dangerous. My parents shot up and my husband asked the doctor, "How serious is it?" The doctor answered in the affirmative, "Very serious." We had two options: give her medicine to eradicate the staph. But there are risks associated with this approach. If we abandon the treatment, you will lose her in a few days. My parents and husband went home with broken hearts. Because there was no extra bed for them in the hospital. My throat felt sore. But I had no way to speak. I asked the nurse to give me a pen and a piece of paper and she told me to write down what I wanted to say. All I could write down was, "My throat was sore." The nurse in charge of me touched my head and said, "It's normal to be a little uncomfortable," but she couldn't remove the tube. A few hours later, I experienced the most memorable event of my life. One of the nurses said to another nurse, she was going to meet her boyfriend at McDonald's on the first floor of the hospital. The second nurse said to me, "She's going to be gone for a while, she won't be there long, she's just going to get some water." Not long after the nurse left, I felt breathless, and as some sputum was produced, the tube was blocked and my moment of suffocation arrived. It stopped the air from reaching my lungs. I had no way to call out loud. My body squirmed, unable to do anything, and a few seconds felt like hours. Almost at the same time, an alarm sounded loudly, and a large group of doctors and nurses entered my room. I heard their panicked screams. They were calling for a team of specialists. They seemed to be shouting like madmen. I could hear everything, but I could no longer breathe. Meanwhile, the doctor put a little fluid in the tube to try to suck out the phlegm. I continued to struggle and then I started to lose consciousness and my body started to surrender. I stopped breathing and my heart stopped beating. Then, I left. Suddenly, I opened my eyes and I felt liberated. I saw myself in a hospital gown and the doctors surrounding my body. I saw my body. I was floating in the air. I felt very relaxed. I couldn't control what was happening, so I chose to give up. Then, the wonderful journey began. I kept floating upward and I saw a very huge tree. I couldn't see the top of the tree, which was shining brightly. There were many small animals around the big tree. Among them were squirrels, rabbits, and birds. They were all in harmony and I felt at peace here. They radiated a love I had never felt before. Their sound penetrates my soul and I continue to float upwards. My body becomes more and more relaxed, my muscles no longer ache. I can breathe freely and I no longer feel tired. This relaxation was not only external, but also internal. The scene in front of me was incredible. There were horses, giraffes, elephants, lions, and more. The scene was beautiful. I was amazed by the color of each species' skin. I saw these wild animals for the first time and they were so different from the animals on Earth. They were friendly, as if we knew each other. I continued my ascent. I saw a lot of children here. They had different skin colors. They come from different areas. Each one is unique and beautiful at the same time. Everyone was happy. Smiles were shining on the children's faces. They played and ran in the fields. There was a beautiful fountain in the center of the garden. A countryside that radiates love everywhere. If I had a choice, I would decide to stay here. I'm like a balloon that doesn't care about what it will leave behind. The air takes it wherever it goes. I don't feel worried or anxious. A little further up the road, I see a lot of people. There are teenagers and middle-aged people. I see harmony, peace, and happiness. People are smiling and I feel empowered. The atmosphere was full of love. In the center of a large garden, there was also a fountain surrounded by flowers of all colors. People were sitting around, talking to each other and smiling at each other. They did not speak. It was as if they were communicating with their consciousness and I could hear their voices. People leaned in the garden and read books. The view of the countryside was beautiful. The tree was like a tunnel full of life, and it seemed that everything blended into one. I didn't feel uncomfortable here. I was not harmed in any way. I think of my parents and my husband. I know they are suffering, and I know they will be okay. I stopped worrying when I thought that they would come here later too. I continued on a little further and I could see a large group of old people. The old people were smiling and they looked strong and energetic. They were in the middle of a garden full of flowers and a beautiful river. They were walking along the river. Suddenly, I saw a light in the distance. Could this be my final destination? The closer I got to it, the stronger the love I felt. I enjoyed it very much. I felt a hand touching the top of my head. In this moment, I was overwhelmed with intense love. I heard a gentle voice that said to me, "Stay calm, you can't stay here yet." I had a lot of questions I wanted to ask, but in this moment, I started my journey home. I thought, am I going to have to go back in this rough way? The experience was so beautiful. I saw myself in a hospital bed and the doctors were resuscitating me. For a moment, I was back in my own body. I felt pain again. I opened my eyes and saw many doctors surrounding me. I felt a lot of heat in my chest. At this moment I started to shout, "No! I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back." No one heard me. I was desperate. I didn't want to stay here. I slowly fell asleep. It was as if no one cared what I wanted. Everyone wanted to take me back to this place of pain. During the time I was away, my heart stopped beating. The doctors were desperate, but they didn't give up on me. After a long time, I regained my heartbeat. I came back. I was back in the hospital. A large group of doctors surrounded me. A cardiologist stayed with me all night. At first, I felt confused and disoriented. I blamed the doctor for bringing me back. Several hours passed before I gradually came to my senses. It was then that I slowly came to terms with what had happened. I told the doctor about my experience, and he reassured me that I was just hallucinating because I was temporarily deprived of oxygen. Only I knew what I had experienced. Then I chose to remain silent.